The Beatles, Synchronicity and Serendipity. Prologue, The Myth and the Reality. So I think I start to believe in synchronicity. The Beatles story is a perfect example. Instead of using a quantum mechanical analogy like we are both atoms who are somehow connected, I would say that we take in the same words. I write this, and you will read this, the same words. That changes our brain. There must be a very similar thing happening in our brains, reading the same words. So our brains are starting to synchronize, and then synchronization happens. The Beatles are more than a band. They are a cultural phenomenon, a myth, a reality that has transcended generations. Their journey from the gritty streets of Liverpool to the pinnacle of global fame is a tale of synchronicity, talent, and the interplay of personal dynamics. As we delve into their story, we will explore the complexity behind the myth, the human elements that made them extraordinary, and the synchronicity that connected them with millions around the world. Chapter 1. The Roots in Liverpool. Liverpool in the 1950s. Liverpool in the 50s was a city of contrasts, gritty, industrial, and yet brimming with a vibrant musical scene. The docks were alive with the comings and goings of ships from around the world, bringing with them an eclectic mix of cultures and sounds. It was in this milieu that the Beatles emerged, shaped by the working-class ethos and the rich tapestry of musical influences that permeated the city. The early lives of the band members. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr were not just musicians, they were products of their environment. John, the rebellious intellectual with a sharp wit, often struggled with the duality of his persona. Raised by his Aunt Mimi in a suburban setting, his life was a mix of discipline and longing for his absent parents. His early exposure to Elvis Presley and rock and roll ignited a passion that would define his future. Paul, the charming diplomat, balanced John's edginess with a keen sense of melody and structure. Growing up in a supportive family, Paul's musical talent was nurtured from a young age. His father, a jazz musician, provided the first piano, and Paul's natural affinity for music flourished. Their partnership began in earnest at a church fete in 1957, a meeting that would change the course of music history. George, the spiritual seeker, was the youngest of the trio and brought a sense of mysticism and introspection. His family was supportive but less musically inclined. George's quiet demeanor masked a fierce determination and an exceptional talent for the guitar, which he pursued with relentless passion. His role as the lead guitarist would become crucial as the band's sound evolved. Ringo, the affable everyman, provided the rhythmic foundation and an essential dose of humility. His early life was marked by illness and hardship, which forged a resilient and optimistic character. Ringo's drumming style, often underrated, was the glue that held the band's complex arrangements together. Formation of the band. The early days of the Beatles were a whirlwind of gigs, lineup changes, and relentless practice. Initially known as the Quarrymen, the band underwent several transformations before settling on the iconic lineup. The influence of Liverpool's music scene, with its skiffle craze and burgeoning rock and roll culture, was pivotal in shaping their early sound. As the Beatles, they began to hone their craft, playing in local clubs and dance halls. Their early repertoire was a mix of rock and roll covers and original compositions, reflecting their diverse influences and growing confidence. These formative years laid the groundwork for their future success, embedding in them a relentless work ethic and a deep-seated camaraderie that would see them through the highs and lows of their journey. Chapter 2. The Crucible of Hamburg. Hamburg's impact. Hamburg was the furnace that forged the Beatles into a formidable band. The Reeperbahn, with its neon lights, seedy bars and bustling music clubs, was a world away from Liverpool. Here, they were exposed to a new level of professional and personal challenge. Growth and challenges. Playing marathon sets in clubs like the Indra and the Kaiserkeller, the Beatles honed their skills, built their stamina, and developed a tight, energetic stage presence. The harsh conditions and relentless schedule were taxing, but they emerged from Hamburg as a cohesive, powerful unit. Personal dynamics and changes. Hamburg also saw significant changes in the band's lineup and personal dynamics. Stuart Sutcliffe, John's close friend and the original bassist, left the band to pursue his passion for art, a decision that deeply affected John. Pete Best, the band's drummer during the Hamburg days, was eventually replaced by Ringo Starr, whose arrival solidified the classic Beatles lineup. Chapter 3. Ascension and Beatlemania, Return to Liverpool and Rise to Fame. Returning to Liverpool, the Beatles found a city ready to embrace their new sound. Their performances at the Cavern Club became legendary, drawing crowds that were unprecedented. Brian Epstein, a local record store owner, recognized their potential and became their manager, bringing a level of professionalism and direction that was previously lacking. The phenomenon of Beatlemania. With the release of their first single, Love Me Do, in 1962, the Beatles began their meteoric rise. Beatlemania swept across the UK and soon the world. Their charisma, catchy songs, and the tight harmonies became a cultural phenomenon. This period was characterized by intense media attention, screaming fans, and a whirlwind of tours and appearances. Personal struggles amidst fame. Behind the scenes, the pressure of fame began to take its toll. The relentless schedule and the loss of privacy strained their relationships and tested their resilience. Despite the external adulation, they struggled with the internal pressures of maintaining their success and the personal sacrifices it entailed. Chapter 4. Creative Evolution and Experimentation, Musical and Personal Growth. From 1965 to 1967, the Beatles entered a period of intense creativity and experimentation. Albums like Rubber Soul, Revolver, and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band showcased their evolution from pop stars to innovative artists. Their music became more complex and reflective of their personal growth and changing influences. Influences and experimentation. The mid-60s saw the Beatles exploring new territories, both musically and personally. Influenced by psychedelics, Eastern philosophy, and avant-garde art, they pushed the boundaries of what pop music could be. Their studio experiments, often guided by producer George Martin, resulted in groundbreaking tracks that redefined their sound and impact, Internal Tensions and Epstein's Death. However, this period also saw growing internal tensions. Creative differences, personal issues, and the pressures of constant innovation created rifts within the band. The death of their manager, Brian Epstein, in 1967 was a profound blow, leaving them without their guiding force and exacerbating the existing tensions. Chapter 5. Disintegration and Disbandment. The late 1960s, a period of disintegration. The late 60s were marked by increasing conflicts within the band. The sessions for the White Album were fraught with tension, and the Get Back project, intended to return them to their roots, only highlighted their differences. The recording of Abbey Road in 1969, while producing some of their finest work, was overshadowed by the realization that the end was near. Final performances and endings. The rooftop concert in January 1969, their final live performance, was a bittersweet farewell. By the time Let It Be was released in 1970, the Beatles had officially disbanded. The end of the Beatles was a moment of cultural significance, marking the end of an era and the beginning of new chapters for each member. Reflections on the end of an era. The breakup was both a public and personal crisis. For the fans, it was the end of a cultural phenomenon. For the band members, it was the dissolution of a deep, if strained, bond. Yet this ending also allowed them to pursue individual paths and explore new creative avenues. Chapter 6. The Aftermath and Legacy Post-Beatles Careers. Each member embarked on solo careers with varying degrees of success. John's work with Yoko Ono and his activism, Paul's prolific output with Wings and as a solo artist, George's spiritual and musical journey, and Ringo's steady presence in music and film showed their individual talents and resilience. Enduring influence and cultural impact. The Beatles' influence is immeasurable. They reshaped music, culture, and even social norms. Their innovative approach to songwriting, recording, and performance set new standards and inspired countless artists. Their legacy is not just in their music, but in their impact on the world. Personal reflections on their legacy. Reflecting on their journey, it's clear that the Beatles were more than the sum of their parts. They were a synchronicity of talents, experiences, and times that created something extraordinary. Their music remains timeless, and their story continues to inspire. Epilogue. Beyond the Myth. Revisiting Synchronicity. Returning to the concept of synchronicity, the Beatles' story is a testament to the power of connection and shared experience. Their music and journey reflect broader human experiences, illustrating how individual paths can converge to create something profound. Final thoughts. The Beatles were complex, contradictory, and human. Their journey from Liverpool to global stardom, their creative evolution, and their eventual disbandment is a story of synchronicity and serendipity. Their extraordinary legacy is a testament to their talent, their innovation, and their humanity.